Welcome back to Manley, where we've just had a dynamic start to the 97 St George Bank Triathlon GP. The winner of the first race was Miles Stewart, Brad Bevan and Chris McCormack right behind him. Guy Leach to wrap up the race.
Well, to me it was just amazing that Miles can come off such a big winter and he's in such great form. Chris McCormack has chucked a spanner in the works, and Brad Bevan, well, he's going to have his work cut out for him this year. Di Holden, how did you see the bike and the run leg?
Well, I think it just shows if you make one mistake, you're gone. Miles and Chris are training partners, so they're obviously paying dividends. And I did hear a whisper that someone yelled out to Spencer Smith, save yourself for the next race.
To me, it seems like the surf's going to play some part in, especially the next race with swim being last. But they are just so tight now. We're in for just an amazing season.
As we prepare for race 2, let's have a quick look at our viewers' competition for 97. Simply pick up an entry at any St George Bank branch, watch the GP, answer some very easy questions, and you'll be in the running for the ultimate sports lovers holiday. Wimbledon, the world's premier tennis tournament. The US Open, the world's most prestigious golf tournament. Or an Ashes test at the home of cricket, Lords. Take your pick. You'll receive tickets to the event of your choice. Qantas Air Travel, plus you and your partner will each receive a $1,000 Polo Ralph Lauren wardrobe. So visit your nearest friendly St George Bank branch, grab an entry, and keep watching the St George Bank Triathlon GP. Second race about to begin. Let's have a look at the format now. This time it is run, cycle, and whoops, we finish with a swim. And I say that because the surf out there is still big. And what awaits us? Mark Fuel.
Well, I think that the speed will be on from the start. I think we'll see the likes of Greg Welsh and Jamie Hunt from New Zealand and Chris McCormack, who was stoked with his placing then, pushing the pace early on to try and get a bit of a lead going on the bike. And they're off and racing. 30 of the world's best triathletes out there to hurt each other for the pleasure of you viewers at home and the crowd.
And there's already a crash. Oh, somebody was virtually pushed over. Glenn Mangum of the United States fell in what was a very, very rough start, and I saw a couple of hands go out. I think it was less of a push and more of just a guarding effort there. Some of the guys were feeling themselves going. They leaned across and Glenn was in front of them and down he went. The 24-year-old resides mostly in Japan these days, still a US citizen, of course. We'll have another look at that fall and just try and make out what happened. Obviously it was just a couple of feet catching one another. Right-hand side of the pack, there it is, and there you go. For protection, the guys just leaned. And, yep, Jerome Sanson there taking a look around at Glenn Mangum, and I'm sure the look on his face said sorry, but there was very little else expressed.
Well, Glenn might have been trying to adopt the tactics of his national sport gridiron there by trying to block some of the other competitors. But that can happen in a tight pack like that. You clip somebody's heel and you will go down. And there's Spencer Smith out in front at the moment with the trademark bandana around his head. In fact, his father Bill was wandering around with one on his head earlier as well. John O'Hall up there, the former Australian duathlon champion and perhaps the strongest cyclist in the world of multisport today, and Greg Welsh in third place at the moment.
Well, this race is set up for Jono because he was intending to do a lot of damage on the bike. I think he's far and away technically the best cyclist in this field. He has had a very, very big background in cycling. In fact, he was third in the Sydney stage of the Cycle Classic, and he hopes to create some carnage on two wheels. Very strong runner as well, as Fuely pointed out, so if he can stay up with them on the run, he can do something quite exciting on the bike, and then, well, the swim, he's just going to have to take pot luck because that is by far his weakest leg.
I think the third race will suit him more. That starts with the bike, but he's very well placed at the moment. Oh, we see some of the competitors hurdling the Rexona and St George signs there because these competitors are tightly packed. Also, right up there in the lead group is Chris Hill. Now, Chris is only 21 years of age, and he performed very well in the International Grand Prix. In fact, he came second behind Brad Bevan overall at the International Grand Prix in Hawaii on his 21st birthday. And so he's had a lot of experience in this type of racing in the last year, and he's a very strong runner. He can then hang on the bike, and he's also a great swimmer.
Wears glasses when he's not competing. His nickname is the Professor, and he said when asked what his favourite leg was, he's right. Spencer Smith leading. John O'Hall putting some pressure on. Greg Welch, disappointed obviously with his first race, is now prominent in the second. Miles Stewart is up there as well with Chris McCormack, Chippy Slater, Brad Bevan on their shoulders. That's your top six. Beyond that, there's a little bit of dropping off going on. I talk about Athletes like Jamie Hunt, Greg Bennett, Jason Meadows finding the pace just a little stiff right now. They have some catching up to do, and on screen you can see the distance there between those competitors. So the lead runners are starting to forge a bit of a gap here in the second of our 3 races this afternoon.
Well, it's a 2-kilometre run, and I think we saw Welshie make a little bit of a move before, because he won't want these two in the front to work together on the bike, because they may get away.
Of course, the only official guide to the St George Bank Triathlon GP is Australian Triathlete magazine. Here it is. It's a bumper 116-page edition, your complete guide to the Grand Prix. In the special lift-out, you'll find maps of all the courses, the point-scoring system, plus complete profiles of all the athletes. But there's much more. Check out the road tests of the top-of-the-range bikes and sell your old one through Australian Triathlete Classifieds. Get online coaching help, a complete event calendar, and the latest results at the Australian Triathlete internet site. The St George Grand Prix Feature Edition. It's essential reading, and it's out now. And this issue also has fascinating articles on the amazing Greg Welch. This is the only major event he hasn't won. Jackie Gallagher, who is defending her championship win last season in the GP, and Nicole Andronicus, one of the most exciting prospects in the world of triathlon, formerly a pentathlete, is now absolutely splitting them apart in her new sport. John O'Hall doing the same as he forges to the lead in this second of the 3 men's races. Spencer Smith behind him from Miles Stewart, then Chris McCormack, Greg Welch and Brad Bevan in single file. Chippy Slater working hard to keep up with those leaders. In fact, had to put on a bit of a spurt out of that turn. Andrew Johns is also prominent. Greg Bennett behind him with Shane Reed, Jamie Hunt, Jason Meadows, Troy Fiddler. Paul O'Brien is still up there. Great to see the young fellow doing well. Locke Volmerhouse, Eamon Nunn, Ralph Zietzen from the Netherlands. I'm sure he's happier on dry land than he is in that Manly surf. Andrew Noble, Chris Hill, Simon Knowles, as we hear the bell lap in the background. Ornelas of Brazil, Carnell, Mangum, Sanson, and Daniel Simon, the man they call Wookie from Berlin, is at the tail.
This pace is hot. At the moment, John O'Hall is still out in front. He's a former professional cyclist, but he still holds an age record for the city to surf, so he isn't any slouch. It's taken him some time to perhaps adjust his body to running again. When he changed from cycling back over to running, he did suffer some stress fractures, as tends to happen when you are putting in long miles on the run. But here he is, out in front of some of the best triathletes in the world. He'll be very comfortable on the bike, and it's just a matter of how well he can perform in the run. And Greg Welch is going for it now.
Returning to our leaders here, of course, and Welch has put on a surge. He's taken them out. Smith is trying to go with him. So is Stewart. Hall has dropped back to 5th now behind McCormack. And Bevan looks to be in a lot more distress than the others, although you never know with the croc, but he doesn't look to be comfortable.
That's just Brad's running style. He does tend to loll his head a little bit. His shoulders roll slightly, but he's still able to hang in there. And as they go into transition, this will be frantic.
Well, this is going to be the leading pack on the bike. There's no question about that. And what a formidable group of athletes this is. Unbelievable. Welch, Bevan, Stewart, Smith, McCormack. I mean, it's great for him to be up there. Chippy Slater having enormous trouble with his helmet. Roaring in there was the number 19, Shane Reed, so hopefully he'll be well placed too. Greg Bennett we just saw leave transition. And with such short distances as they help each other separate the bikes, Di Holden, it's very important that they get clean transitions. Oh, before we go to Di, here's obviously a major problem for McCormack. That is a disaster.
Well, he's got a flat tyre. They're changing it very quickly, but he was in the lead group, and this it will be very distressing for him. You can see they're trying to change it as quickly as possible. Chris is just hoping they can do it quickly so he can get out there, but any chance of him being up there with the leaders, that's gone.
Oh, Chris says it all with that little curse and a shake of the head. Very disappointing. Miles Stewart is out in the lead. We will go back to Di Holden now. Quite a frenetic transition, Di.
Yeah, there was a lot of bustling for positions, but clean transitions from Stewart, Welch, Smith and Bevan. Great disappointment for Chris McCormack.
Stewart leading. Greg Welch is up behind him. And so there's one continuous factor about this race today, and that is Miles Stewart is right up on the pace all the way. We've seen surges from all over the place, but Miles is certainly out to make a statement. As we mentioned, won one of these races here last season, but mentioned at a news conference yesterday that he was still trying to work out how to pace himself through a series And his training, of course, his base training and how he tapers for this event has a lot to do with that. This year, under his father on the Gold Coast and with a group of other triathletes as well, he's been able to do that and measure his preparation. Let's have a quick look now at a crash that's happened in the background, and unfortunately it's young Paul O'Brien, the man, as we mentioned, who came close to beating the croc, and that was a heavy fall, but worse still for the athletes behind him. It brought that whole thing to a halt. Noble was up there too. He was one of the athletes, and so was Jamie Hunt, affected by that crash. But Paul, thankfully, was up, bouncing back to his feet. And we're back now with the leaders as we see them coming down the long stretch at the Corso in front of the Manly Pacific Park Royal. Right here, Miles Stewart is there, Greg Welch is up there shadowing him, and of course Bevan and Smith, the prominent, Jonathan Hall. Now, will Jono Hall try something incredible on this bike leg?
Well, Jono obviously didn't have a very good transition because he has actually slipped off the back of this group. We've got Welsh out in front at the moment, Bevan beside him, Stewart, there's Stewart just in front, and Smith. Now, I can't see Jono Hall in that shot. In fact, he is 5 seconds behind. So he had a poor transition. I think he will be able to bridge that gap. Andrew Johns may well go with him, and it's another 5 seconds to young Trent Chapman with Greg Bennett, Locke Volmerhouse, Troy Fiddler and Chippy Slater just behind them.
Well, it's worth mentioning Trent Chapman, the 20-year-old from Penrith. He was third in the World Juniors in Cleveland in 1996, and his ambition this time is to beat some of the old guys. Well, that's his term, not mine. Greg Welch and Brad Bevan. He also won the juniors in the Penrith League of the St George Tour, Penrith being his home turf, and he is undefeated in the Panthers Tri-Club. He says the Bush boys are out to beat the men from the coast. Well, of course, that's a very loose term because we know Penrith is certainly nothing like the Bush these days. It's a bustling city.
Well, Trent did very well, as he mentioned, third at the World Juniors this year. I think this will be a learning experience for him. It's very hard for a junior to come into this series and expect to perform strongly because we have the best guys in the world, and the form of Miles Stewart at the moment really is phenomenal, and he's well placed going into this second swim, and you can't see it on the screen at the moment, but there are plenty of waves rolling in. There are big sets building, and again, it will depend on the luck of the surf when these guys go back. But Miles racing very smartly here. He's just sitting there in second place at the moment, just behind Greg Welch. They're not doing anything stupid on those corners. They're just working well together. Spencer Smith is really having a little bit of difficulty on some of those corners. He's allowed himself to slip off the back of Bevan, and so each time he has to accelerate that much more along the straight to try and get the benefit of the draft behind the three in front of him.
Well, the first race may have taken a bit of steam out of him, but I'm surprised Jonathan Hall has not been able to make up that few seconds gap between the leaders and himself. He is such an accomplished cyclist, and if you might recall his name, he was in fact our bike cam man last season for the GP. But as we go to a break, here are your leaders: Stewart, Bevan, Welch, Smith, and then a little gap to Jonathan Hall. Bennett is prominent, so is Fiddler, Volmerhouse, Johns, and great work to top 10 so far, Trent Chapman. We'll be back.
Grand Prix Series, proudly brought to you by Nike. Gatorade, used by athletes in the 1996 International Triathlon Grand Prix. And you know where you stand with St George.
The Carnival on the Corso, round one of the St George Bank Triathlon GP. This is race 2 of the Triple Super Sprints, and there has been a move. There has been a move of some proportion. Jonathan Hall is now putting pressure on Miles Stewart. We talked a lot about where Jono was. He was a few seconds off the back of the pack, but only a man of his calibre on the bike could put in a surge of that proportion. He is now about to take the lead from Miles Stewart, and if Miles can stay with him, Jono will give him a nice little carry into the final swim. Bevan, Smith, Welch are prominent there in that lead group, or close to them. But then there's about 10 seconds to Locke Volmerhouse, Greg Bennett, Trent Chapman, Troy Fiddler, Andrew Noble, Jason Metters, Andrew Johns, and there's a massive pack forming there with Slater, Reed, Knowles, Zeitz, Hunt, Nunn, and Chris Hill. Then a big gap to Paul O'Brien, falling off the back with Cardell, Ornelas, Magnum, McCormack, Sanson and Simon, and reminding him McCormack had to pause because he lost a wheel.
Yeah. Well, that is really an amazing move by Jonathan Hall there. We saw there were 4 guys together in the lead, and within a matter of 1.5 laps, the gap has opened up from Jonathan Hall back to 4th place Spencer Smith, 11 seconds. Now that is quite incredible, but Miles Stewart was extremely clever. He hopped on a Jono's wheel and he stuck in. There is now 8 seconds between Stewart and Bevan in 3rd.
Well, let's have a look. We've got Hall in the lead. And we have Stewart right behind him. And boy, this has been an enormous benefit. Well, that's second, that's 3rd and 4th, in fact. No, it's not. That's Jonathan Hall. Looks like Stewart's taken back the lead. It's a little confusing here. There it is. Jonathan Hall is now in 2nd place. Stewart is actually taking on the big man on the bike. And there is now 3rd and 4th. Bevan and Welch is up there as well. In fact, that's Jerome Sanson. I think he's a lap down.
Well, this just goes to show that anything can happen in this Grand Prix racing. You introduce a new factor like the surf, like an ex-professional cyclist like Jono Hall, and all sorts of things start to happen. Jono Hall has really pushed the pace, and the bike pack has just split into pieces.
Well, that's the first time I think we've seen that in the St George Bank Triathlon GP. We've not seen a cyclist of that calibre able to split up the pack as he has, and what he's created is a situation where Miles Stewart is just working with Hall. There's your second group of 2 riders, and it's Bevan and it is Jerry, that is Jerome Sanson, so he's a lap down and just hanging on. Now there's a gap after Brad of quite a few seconds to big Spencer Smith, and Greg Welch is just out of the picture at the moment, so we'll try and get a lap time for you on the computer when Welch comes through the checkpoint, but at the moment no sign of Greg Welch. But there's the 3rd pack. Spencer's there, and I think now he's fallen back to athletes such as Andrew Noble. Greg Bennett is up there as well with Jason Metters and Troy Fiddler. Trent Chapman is still there. Shane Reed is also with them, and Simon Knowles and Chippy Slater. Then there's a gap to Zeitz and Hunt and another group. Greg Welch at the moment we can't locate for you. We hope he isn't out of the race. It may just be a glitch on the lap timing. But right now, Miles Stewart, who won the first race, is making the most of Jonathan Hall's ability on the bike.
Well, I predicted that Miles would win at least one race today. The position he's in at the moment, he'll definitely win too, because he's a much stronger swimmer than Jono Hall, and by putting 15 seconds over the 3rd place person, I don't think really anybody's going to be able to make that up unless Miles gets absolutely smashed by some of these waves and gets held up. So he has put himself in a great position to win a 2nd race and overall today, and they are on their final lap, so Jono Hall still out in front.
Guy Leach, if you're down there, I know you're well positioned on the bike leg. Miles has certainly made a masterpiece out of the tactics in this one.
Well, I tell you what, Brad Bevan just didn't go when Jono Hall went, and Miles Stewart did, and he has made a huge difference to the difference between Brad and he right now. He's looking good going into the swim. He is quite good in the surf from the Gold Coast, knows what he's doing, and he's a man of confidence, and God help the rest of the competitors if he wins today going in for the rest of the series.
Well, we just had word that Greg Welch did in fact have to stop. We're not sure what it was for. Flat tyre, in fact, I've just been told. So he has rejoined the race, but he's in the 3rd pack. So it's been a pretty awful day so far for Greg Welch. He was well back in the first race, and there's no chance he'll be able to make up any sort of ground in the second. So it looks like Welchie is going to start the series off on the wrong foot yet again, but be warned, he always comes back, and we expect he may even do that as early as race 3 today. He certainly had a rest, having stopped on the bike, Mark Fuel. Not that that'll make a lot of difference, but Miles Stewart and Jono Hall are the 2 leaders, and a remarkable performance, and quite unusual, as Guy pointed out, to see 2 of the athletes able to drop Brad Bevan off. How often does that happen?
It very, very rarely happens. In fact, I really didn't think that Jonathan Hall would make his impact felt until the 3rd race. The 3rd race, in fact, starts with a bike, and I thought that one he would really go for it. Here they are, they're coming in transition. Miles will be first into transition, and he is in a great position here for the last 300-metre swim. They will rack their bikes, get rid of their helmets, and grab their goggles and head off into the surf, and let's see whether they can be lucky and get a clean run, or whether the sets will really cause some damage.
Come on, Jono, get that bike racked and get out of there. Jono Hall, our bike cam man from 1996, obviously was pretty keen to get involved in the action because he's right in the middle of it in 97. There's Brad coming out of transition, and the marshals, as you can probably hear in the background, saying go right, and he is now going the right way. He's with a group of athletes. It's not out of this at all, Brad Bevan. He's a strong swimmer, and with the surf being so tricky, he only needs an ounce of luck to pass Miles Stewart and Jonathan Hall. Jason Meadows running past. There's a whole group of athletes swarming. Spencer Smith's there. Welchie was in that group. Troy Fiddler, the last one to leave shot. Andrew Johns is also there, coming in now towards the water. Let's have a look at Miles Stewart's form as he goes in for the first time to this rather cold surf at Manley. It's very much into summer, but the currents have not been kind to us so far on this part of the coast, and we've had quite a bit of cold water as we see Andrew Noble heading down towards the field there. This is certainly his least favourite leg. He would be almost looking to go backwards when he sees some of the sets that have been coming in, despite the low tide, which has flattened out the surf quite a bit and shortened it as well. A lot more wading to be done in this particular race, and they'll have further to run and less to swim. Welchie finally getting off the course and heading towards the water now. And this will be still a wide open race. You can see there's still a lot of side wash there in the early part, and they've got to choose the right path out, and their timing has got to be good as well. Miles Stewart first into the water. John O'Hall, well, I guess if anything, working with Stewart, Mark, would have given him a little bit of a breather, and he may be able to hang on to some position on the swim.
It may well. 300 metres isn't that far, but I think what we'll find is that the good waders, guys like Simon Knowles, who are able to run out, dive, and use the sand, use the shallows, have made up ground already. We saw Simon Knowles was in that second pack. Brad Bevan lost all the advantage he had early on because that pack came in just behind him. Miles, though, has had a great run out, and in fact he is way out in front.
Guy Leach is on the beach. Have you been able to assess the form of some of these guys? Guy, it's pretty tricky at the moment.
Yeah, there's potholes. The low tide is nearly at its lowest, and because of that, it means the guys have to wade out. They're very, very tired, having used their legs in the run and the bike prior to the swim leg. Now Miles had a good run out. He didn't cop too many sets. He went under the water. He hung on to the bottom as he does, as he knows to do, and because of that, he's got a gap. Now it's just going to be a case of whether he can pull a wave on the way in and get pushed in. But certainly at the moment, a lot of these guys are very fatigued, and they're treading very cautiously because they're not used to these holes in the bottom of the beach.
We just saw running out of transition, would you believe, Jerome Sanson, arguably the best swimmer in the field, and there's Chris McCormack, who was just behind Jerome. So it's a very spread field, and unfortunately for Chris, reminding you that he was in the leading pack until he had a problem with his bike. So it's a great problem for him, but he still has one more race with which to pick up points. Miles Stewart, though, looks terrific. He's out the back now, rounding the second buoy. He only has to swim back about 120 or so metres to the beach, and then a short run up the sand and heading towards what will be, I'm sure, a very comforting 50 metres. He's almost picked up this wave just off the back.
Well, there's another one coming. There's another two waves about to come in, so he'll be in a good position. The question will be, here's some other competitors about to round the buoy. Will they get one?
Well, that's it. Had Miles been able to catch that wave, it would have been conclusive. He could get this one, but no, he's off the back again. There has been a bit of a rip out there at some stage, and at some places it's going to be tougher to catch that wave. It would have been conclusive. He could get this one, but no, he's off the back again. There has been a bit of a rip out there at some stage, and at some places it's going to be tougher to catch the waves than in others. There's one athlete out the back who has missed a wave as well. Miles is slowing down. He's hanging on. He's going to make the use of this white water. In fact, he's ducking under it. He doesn't want to get churned up. Just let it push him along a little bit. He's off the back now. And it is really hard going when some of these big waves come through. Here he is again.
Whoa.
This time.
Oh, and some...
That's Bevan, I think. I think that's Bevan. I think that's Bevan. It's very hard to tell from that shot, but I'm pretty sure that was Brad Bevan getting a wave, and that really makes it interesting. Look at Miles standing up, having a look.
Well,
he could have his goggles full of sand. You don't know what's going on. He's wading in very, very thick surf here, and I'm not sure if he even saw Brad Bevan. Here he is getting a good little wave. Guy, how close is Brad Bevan?
Well, I tell you what, he took off in that wave. It dumped very, very heavily, being low tide at the moment. Now he's pulled right up alongside Miles Stewart, and it's a case now of who can get out of the water the easiest. Now, it's very, very potholy down there, and these guys, as Brad jumps onto the white water there, he's pushed himself in front of Miles, and that could be the winning break.
And another competitor has just body surfed the wave. It's Simon Knowles.
Oh, Simon Knowles, great performance. Coming from nowhere.
Knowlesy's going to challenge.
Oh, Bevan's out of the water first. Stewart fell in a pothole, and look at the long legs of Knowles pulling himself out of the water. Brad Bevan is going to be too quick in the sprint, I think, for Simon Knowles, but what a great performance from him. And right up there as well, it's Chippy Slater, is it? It's Chippy Slater with a big serve. They came from all over the place. The waves swept them in. And oh, what an amazing turnaround here. Brad Bevan, with the use of the surf here at Manley, is under pressure from Chippy, who's putting in a big sprint. Let's have a quick look as Chippy tries to reel him in. Go Chippy, this is unbelievable. He's certainly made a dent in this race, but Brad's won it. Great performance from the Croc. Who said crocodiles can't surf? Amazing. Chippy Slater a close second. Simon Knowles can afford to trot in third, and what a disaster for Miles Stewart. Left in a pothole on the beach at Manley when he really had set this race up. There he is now, coming in fourth place. Remarkable stuff. We talked about it, and I certainly don't think we overemphasised the fickle nature of this surf today and the part it's played in this racing. Here's Guy Leach.
Well, Brad, mate, you can hardly say words, so I'll talk a little bit. That wave that you took off on the last bit of the swim, I know you probably didn't want to take off on it because you were full of breath and you had to hold your breath to get down. It was something like 6 feet, but that made the difference.
Yeah, I thought it was big winds out there. I caught the thing, but I didn't know I caught it until I just got pounded and I went under and the lights went out. It was pitch black and I got up again. I didn't know where I was, but kept it going. But I did take a lot of breath.
Well, at that stage, it was a race in two between you and Miles. Now, you caught that little bit of white water that pushed you ahead, and then Chippy and Simon Knowles came through. It's one of the tightest finishes we've ever had with the swim last.
Yeah, it was close. Always with a bit of sand run, it makes it a lot harder as well. But I knew if I hit the hard dirt first, then I'd get a couple more metres break on, so had to make to the hard ground first.
Now you've had two good finishes in the first two races. Would Miles be the hardest person to beat, you think, with this last race to go?
Yeah, well, he's got a win up, and with these races, first place gets an extra 2 points bonus. So he's got a win, I've got a win, so it's coming down the last race.
Well, good luck for that.
Thanks.
Good man.
Oh, what a finish. Quite remarkable. Brad, quite rightly, and you can tell that Brad is one of the smartest runners. In fact, as I speak, Spencer Smith has only just come through the finish chute, so he's thinking, get me to a lake, please. Oh, amazing stuff. Andrew Johns having a rest, Troy Fiddler as well, but that's incredible. Great finish, Brad Bevan. The Croc has taken out race 2. We've got one race to come, and I think you've probably seen by now anything can happen. We'll come back with more after this.